All right, so hello everyone and welcome back to the course after the midterm. So hope you have gotten a good result in the midterm exam. So today's topic will be about price ceilings and price floor. And to start with, I would like to review the impacts that are aroused by price ceilings and price floor respectively. And afterwards, we'll discuss the problems and to complete the attendance exercise as usual. So let's start with price ceiling. All right, so a price ceiling is the maximum price allowed by law. And the example I used here would be rent control. Okay, so let's say we have a price ceiling PC here. Okay, so under the meaning of price ceiling, any price below this PC is allowed by law. Okay, so the remarks here is saying that a price ceiling is binding or effective when it is below the equilibrium price. Imagine there's a price ceiling above the equilibrium level, let's say here. Okay, so by the meaning of price ceiling, any price below this level is allowed by law, including the equilibrium price. So this is why when the price ceiling is set above the equilibrium level, it would be ineffective and there will be no impact seen in the market. Okay, so it's important for us to check the effectiveness of the price ceiling or price floor. Okay, so with then effective price ceiling imposed, the price would decrease, quantity demanded would increase, quantity supplied would decrease, and quantity transacted would decrease. So this is the impacts aroused by an effective price ceiling. With an increase in quantity demanded and a decrease in quantity supplied, there will be excess demand, or we also say that shortage at the controlled price PC. So this is the first effect. And the second impact is a reduction in product quality. So in the longer run, the demand and supply will adjust such that they intersect each other at the control price PC. So this is about the adjustment of product quality in the longer run due to the effective price ceiling. And the third one is misallocation of resources, and is related to the signal function of prices. So what does it mean by the signal function of prices? So it's simply referring that prices is reflecting information about market demand and supply. So primarily the equilibrium price should reflect information about the market demand and supply. But when there's an effective price then imposed, then the prevailing market price would become PC, which cannot accurately reflect information about market demand supply as the equilibrium price does. Okay, so this illustrates the misallocation of resources. Okay, so the fourth one will be about the allocation methods under an effective price ceiling. So the first one will be bribery. And let me make up some numbers to illustrate the idea here, okay? All right, so these are some random numbers that I use to demonstrate the idea. So when there's an effective price ceiling at $4 here, then all 6 buyers here, okay, all these 6 buyers are willing and able to buy at this level of price, okay? And apparently there will be excess demand in the market. So we will use bribery to clear the market. So what would happen in this case? So suppose there is $1 of per unit bribe, okay? $1 per unit bribe like here, okay? Then only these buyers, let me use another color. So only these purple buyer will be willing and able to buy at this $4 of price ceiling in addition to the $1 of per unit bribe. Okay, so as you can see, the number of buyers would fall with the bribe here. Okay, and anyway, you can see the market is still not clear because the quantity demanded is still greater than the quantity supply of 4 at this level. Okay, so at what level would clear the market? Imagine that the full cost of buying the good would be the pricing PC plus the per unit bribe. Okay, the per unit bribe has to be large enough such that it intersects at this level. Okay, such that the market would be clear. And effectively, the per unit bribe has to be at least $4 such that the market will be clear and the quantity demanded will equals to the quantity supplied for at this level. Okay, so this is about the allocation method of bribery. And if we are required to find the total value of bribery, it's simply the per unit bribe of $4 multiplied by the quantity traded at this level, okay, 4 times 4. And graphically, the total value of bribery will be given by this orange rectangle. All right, so this is about bribery. And how about waiting in line? So actually, everything is the same, just that the full cost of buying the good equals to PC plus the per unit time cost. Okay, instead of the per unit bribe, it becomes the per unit time cost. So to clear the market, the per unit time cost has to be $4, such that the market will be clear. Okay, each person has to wait at least $4 worth of time to clear the market under waiting in line. Okay, and under this case, the orange rectangle would be given or expressing the total value of wasted time. Right, each person is waiting for $4 worth of time multiplied by the quantity traded of 4. So this area would simply be the total value of wasted time under waiting in line. Okay. So by the way, under this case, we have the assumption that all buyers have the same time cost of queuing. If we do not have this assumption, the analysis would be quite complicated. So this for simplicity. All right. So the final thing would be about the welfare analysis under an effective price ceiling. So we have 3 allocation methods here. Okay. So consumer surplus may be higher under the first allocation method, simply consumed by the highest value buyers. So why? If there's no price ceiling yet, then the consumer surplus will be this area, right? So this blue triangle. While with the effective price ceiling, we know that the consumer surplus will become the yellow trapezium if the goods are simply consumed by the highest value buyers. As there are some gains and losses, then we are uncertain about the overall change in consumer surplus. Okay, while under bribery or waiting in line, the consumer surplus must be smaller, as you can see in the 2 diagrams below. And regarding the welfare loss, okay, under the first allocation method, simply consumed by highest value buyers, and under bribery, the welfare loss is simply the checked triangle here. But under waiting in line, the welfare loss will be much greater. As you can see, it's the whole big pentagon here. So why? What matters is this purple rectangle in the middle, right? So under waiting in line, this purple rectangle would be the total value of wasted time. And simply, there's no one can gain the value of wasted time, right? So this means that the total value of wasted time will be counted as part of the welfare loss. But under the other 2 allocation methods, simply consumed by highest value buyers and bribery, there must be someone who can get this purple rectangle, right? Either obtained by the consumers in the first allocation method, or obtained by the bribe receivers under bribery. Okay. So this is why the welfare loss is the largest under waiting in line. And by the way, be aware, the total value of bribery is neither the consumer surplus nor the producer surplus. So be aware of that. It is the gain of the bribe receivers. So it depends on who can receive the total value of bribery. All right, so that's all about the effects of a price ceiling. And the next thing I would like to go through is the price floor. And it's simply the minimum price allowed by law. So the example I put down here will be minimum wage regulation. So similarly, we have remarks here, which is saying that a price floor is effective when it is set above the equilibrium level. Okay, so similar to the price ceiling side, we need to check about the effectiveness of the price floor. So with the imposition of an effective price floor, the price will increase, quantity demanded would decrease, quantity supplied would increase, while the quantity transacted would decrease. So these are the impacts aroused by an effective price floor. And as you can see, with a drop in quantity demanded and a rise in quantity supplied, there will be surplus, or we also say that excess supply at the control price. I call it PF. Okay, so this is the first impact. And the second impact, similarly, in the longer run, demand supply will adjust such that they intersect each other at the control price PF in the longer run. And the third one, misallocation of resources again. So because the prevailing market price cannot accurately reflect information about market demand and supply. So the signal function of prices will be distorted, which leads to the misallocation of resources. And finally, about the welfare distribution under an effective price floor. So we have two allocation methods here, simply produced by the lowest cost seller or wasteful increases in product quality. So the first note, produce surplus may be higher if the goods are produced by the lowest cost seller. So again, if there's no regulation yet, then this purple triangle will be the produce surplus. But under the effective price floor and the allocation method simply produced by lowest cost seller, then the produce surplus will become this orange trapezium. And there'll be some gain and losses, meaning that the produce surplus has an uncertain change. Okay, the second bullet point, welfare loss is the largest when the buyers do not value the quality improvements. So this is related to the second allocation method here, wasteful increases in product quality. So again, what matters is the rectangle in the middle here, right? The orange rectangle, the quality waste here. So if the buyers do not value the quality improvement, then this rectangle will be captured as the quality waste. And in other words, it will be counted as part of the welfare loss. All right, so this is all about the things I would like to review, and please take a look at the following problem. Okay, so hope you have some initial ideas for this problem. And let me start with question 1. If the government decides to set a price ceiling at $1,500, so what happened in the market? So dealing with this question, we need to check the effectiveness of the price ceiling or price floor. And as you can see, 1,500 is above the equilibrium level of 1,000. So this means that this price ceiling is ineffective and the market will just have no impact, right? So the price and quantity and everything will just stay the same. So this means that, the answer will be none of the above, right? Nothing will change in the market. Okay, so how about question 2? We have a government to impose a pricing at $500 instead. And this time, 500 is an effective price ceiling because it's set below the equilibrium price. So question 2 says that if the apartments are sold to those who value the apartments the most, then what will be the area of consumer surplus? So remember, what matters is the rectangle in the middle, right? So if the allocation method is this one, allocated to those who value the apartment the most, then the rectangle in the middle here will be captured as part of the consumer surplus, right? So this is why we have the whole pink trapezium here as the consumer surplus, okay? So the area of a trapezium can be calculated as follows, right? Upper base plus the lower base times height divided by 2, and we have the required consumer surplus to be 1,250,000. Okay, so question 3. Instead, the allocation method is bribery. What will be the total revenue of the bribe receivers? So it is simply the rectangle in the middle, right, as I've introduced to you. So this rectangle would be the answer. So per unit bribe would be 1,500 minus 500. Multiply that by the quantity traded, 1,000. Then we have the total bribe revenue is $1 million. And finally, for question 4, the allocation method becomes a waiting in line. And we are finding the difference in total social welfare between bribery and waiting in line. So bear in mind, what matters is the rectangle in the middle. because under waiting in line, this pink rectangle will become the total value of wasting time, and no one can capture this value of wasted time. But under bribery, this pink rectangle would be the revenue of the bribe receivers. So at least there will be someone who can capture this area. So this is why the difference in total social welfare would be this rectangle in the middle area is 1 million. All right, so that's all for this problem, and we'll move on to question 5. Okay, so we are going to determine whether we can see a bigger excess demand under what case of elasticity of demand supply. When there's a effective rent control set below the equilibrium rent, then the price will drop, right? And by the meaning of elastic, with the decrease in price, the quantity demanded would increase a lot, while the quantity supplied would decrease a lot. So this is what it means by an elastic demand and supply. So if the gap between the QD and QS is larger, then we will expect a bigger excess demand. So this is why when the demand and supply are both more elastic, then we'll expect a greater gap between QD and QS, and thus a greater excess demand. Okay, so this is how we can understand this intuitively, and it's also put down in words here. And we can also understand this graphically as well, as you can see in the two diagrams here. On the left-hand side diagram, the demand and supply are less elastic, while on the right-hand side diagram, they are more elastic. Okay, with the same level of price control imposed here, the effective price ceiling, the excess demand on the right-hand side diagram is greater. And this explains why when the demand and supply are more elastic, the excess demand will be larger. All right, so that's all for this one, and we'll move on to question 6. Okay, so as you can see here, there are two events happening, and we are going to analyze how the consumer surplus of this good would change. And similarly, we would apply the technique learned in comparative statistics. We would like to decompose the impact aroused by each event individually first, and then to draw an overall conclusion to see how they will jointly affect the consumer surplus. So this is the idea. And the first event, the government raises the effective price floor on good X. Then in this case, the price will increase while the quantity transacted would fall. So from the perspective of a consumer, a higher price is a bad thing, while a lower quantity is also a bad thing. So raising an effective price floor must cause a decrease in consumer surplus. So this is about the first event. For the second event, the price of its substitutes increases. So this would cause an increase in the demand for good X. And this will lead to an increase in price and also an increase in quantity traded. So from the perspective of a consumer, a higher price is a bad thing, but a higher quantity traded is a good thing. So one decreased consumer surplus while the other increased consumer surplus. We are uncertain about the overall change in consumer surplus due to the higher price of substitutes. So now we can draw an overall conclusion. So the first event is lowering the consumer surplus, while the second event has an uncertain impact on consumer surplus. So jointly, we are also uncertain about the overall change in consumer surplus. So this means that consumer surplus may increase or decrease. All right, so that's all, and we'll move on to the next one, the first parts exam problem. Okay, so let's start with question 20 to find the unregulated market equilibrium rent and equilibrium labor hours. So nothing special, it's simply find the equilibrium point, the intersection between demand and supply. So we just plug in the demand supply functions here, then we have the equilibrium wage 44.8, equilibrium labor hours 456. Okay, so question 21 and 22, we have minimum wage of $49.4. So what happened in this case? So first of all, 49.4 is above the equilibrium level, so it is an effective price floor. Okay, so we are going to determine whether there's shortage or surplus in this case. So because minimum wage is a price floor, so it is also effective, right? So there will be surplus emerging in the market. So this is the first part. And the surplus of labor by how many units? It is simply finding the gap between QS and QD at this minimum wage of 49.4. So as you can see, the quantity as suggested by point A would be the QS, while the quantity as suggested by point B would be the QD. So we are going to find the difference between the two units, 548 minus 318, which means that the surplus of labor is 230 units. Okay, so question 22, we are going to find the economic surplus accrued to workers and the economic surplus accrued to firms. So let's see. So for the economic surplus accrued to firms, they are actually referring to consumer surplus. Why? Because in the labor market, firms are actually buying labor. So this is why economic surplus accrued to firms is referring to consumer surplus. And consumer surplus under an effective price floor would be the blue triangle here. So using a polygon function, we will be able to find out the area, which is 1,685.4. How about the economic surplus accrued to workers? First of all, it's talking about producer surplus simply because workers are selling themselves as labor in the labor market, right? So this is why economic surplus accrued to workers is referring to the producer surplus. And because we are required to find the maximum economic surplus accrued to workers. So again, what matters is the rectangle in the middle. So if we would like to find the maximum level of producer surplus, this means that this rectangle will be captured as producer surplus. And it will happen under the case where the goods are produced by the lowest cost producers. Okay, and anyway, we are going to find the area of the trapezium here, the yellow trapezium. So using a polygon function, we are able to find all that is 6,185.1. Okay, so how about question 23 and 24? We have a wage subsidy policy instead. So in order to raise the effective wage workers get paid to $49.4, what would be the wage subsidy required? So to increase the effective wage of workers to 49.4, okay, this means that the PS, okay, the PS will be 49.4. And at the price of 49.4, the quantity supplied will be 548. Okay. So to impose the right amount of subsidy at this quantity, we are going to find the difference between PS and PD at the quantity of 548. And as you can see, the corresponding PD will be 41.73, as you can see in the diagram here. Okay. The gap between PS and PD will be the per unit wage subsidy required, 7.67. And to find the subsidy expenditure, nothing special. We just multiply the per unit subsidy by the quantity of 548. Then we have the subsidy expenditure of this amount. Or alternatively, we can also find out the subsidy expenditure in the GeoGebra screenshot here, right? The purple rectangle here would be the area of the subsidy expenditure. Okay, so finally, question 24, the economic surplus accrued to the workers and also total loss to society. So for economic surplus accrued to workers, again, is producer surplus. So under the PS 49.4 and the quantity traded 548, we will have this orange triangle as the producer surplus. So using a polygon function, again, we have this number, 7,500 and something. And if you're required to find the economic surplus accrued to firms, in this case, it will be consumer surplus, and the area would be this yellow triangle. Okay, so this is the consumer surplus in this case. Although it's not required, this is just for your better understanding and to consolidate what you have learned in the previous chapter. And finally, to find the total loss to society, it is simply the triangle to the right-hand side of the efficient point, the green triangle here as the deadweight loss in this case. So we can find out the area of 352.67. All right, so that's all for this problem, and we'll move on to the next one. Please take a look. Okay, so for question 24, we are going to find the right amount of subsidy if the government would like to increase the usage of childcare services by 140,000 hours. Okay, so originally the quantity is 1148. If the target is to increase by 140, this means that the new quantity will be 1148 plus 140, which is 1,288. So we are going to find the PS minus PD at this new quantity, 1288. So how can you do that? We just plug in this quantity, 1288, back into the demand and supply function respectively. Then we have PD 34.4 and PS 69.4. So the difference between PS and PD will give us the result. The per unit subsidy required is $35. And for question 25, if the government decides to set a price floor at F dollars, and would like to limit the loss gain from trade to 19,200, what would be the maximum value of F? So let's record a diagram under this effective price floor. Okay, so if we have a price floor at F dollars, Under this allocation method, consumed by the highest value buyers and also produced by the lowest cost seller, then the welfare loss is simply this area, right? The deadweight loss. So we would like to express the area of deadweight loss using the area of a triangle. The technique similar to the target type question that we have introduced in the previous chapter. Okay, so let me call here as delta P and here as delta Q. Then the area of deadweight loss can be expressed as this thing, delta Q times delta P divided by 2, right? The area of a triangle. So how can we find delta P? It is simply the PD minus PS at the quantity, right? So how can we do that? We just express the demand function using P as a subject, then we have PD, and express the supply function using P as a subject, then we have PS here. And after some simplification, we will have the delta P as this expression, 287 minus Q over 4. Okay, so the thing here. Well, for delta Q, equilibrium quantity 1148, right? And then the new quantity is the Q that we are going to solve. So this is why the change in quantity is 1148 minus Q. Divide the whole thing here by 2, then we will equate with the deadweight loss target 19,200. And this will be the target equation that we'd like to solve. And again, it's actually a quadratic equation. So this is why I would like to plot the quadratic graph of y equals to the left-hand side minus 19,200, and then I would like to find out the x-intercept of this quadratic graph to solve this quadratic equation. Okay, and again, we will have 2 solutions for a quadratic equation, and we should reject one of them. And specifically, we should reject point A because the quantity as suggested by point A is 1,539 point something, which is even greater than the original equilibrium quantity 1148, so which is not reasonable under an effective price floor. So we should accept point B, 756.08. All right, so how can we find the maximum value of F? As you can see in the diagram here, when we have the quantity 756.08, we can find out F by plugging in this quantity back into the demand function. Plug in this new quantity back into the demand function, then we'll have the amount of F required. So this is what I'm trying to do here to find out the value of F, 140.78. All right, so this the target type question involving a price floor. And that's all for this one, and we'll move on to next question. Please take a look. Okay, so let's start with question 21 to find out the total value of bribe in this market. So likely you may think that the per unit bribe required is 8 minus 4, right? However, we do not need the per unit bribe to be $4 at large. Why? With the effective price ceiling at $4, okay, there will be quantity demanded of 6, right? All these 6 buyers are willing and able to buy, while the quantity supplied is only 4. This means that there will be excess demand in the market. Okay, so imagine a per unit bribe of $2 first. in this case, then the full cost of buying the good will become 4 plus 2, which is $6. And effectively, only these 5 buyers are willing and able to buy at the level of price ceiling with the per unit bribe of $2. And as you can see, the market is not yet clear because the quantity demanded is 5, okay, greater than the quantity supply of 4. However, we do not need the per unit bribe to be $4 at large, because if the per unit bribe is slightly greater than 2, let's say it becomes 2.01, then the full cost of buying the good becomes 6.01, meaning that this 5th buyer would be driven out of the market already. So we do not need the per unit bribe to be too large. Okay. So for this case, the per unit bribe has to be slightly greater than 2. And to find out the total value of bribe, it would multiply that by 4, okay, the quantity traded. So this is why the total value of bribe in this market is slightly greater than 8. Okay, as you can see, I have put down here. How about question 22? The allocation method becomes waiting in line. And again, everything is the same, just that the per unit bribe becomes the per unit time cost. Okay, so effectively, each person has to wait slightly greater $2 worth of time to clear the market. So this is the first blank in question 22. And because each person is earning $2 per hour, this means that each of them has to spend 2 divided by 2, which is slightly greater than 1 hour in waiting line to clear the market. Okay, each person has to wait slightly greater than 1 hour so that the market will be clear. Okay, so that's all, and we'll move on to this problem, the last one in this tutorial. Okay, so we have 2 goods considered in this question actually, crude oil and gasoline, and we are trying to analyze the gasoline market. So if we have an effective price ceiling on crude oil, the raw material, what will happen in this case? Although it only gives you information about the supply of crude oil without the demand, we can actually find out the quantity traded of crude oil. Why? Because with an effective price ceiling, okay, even when we have the demand, something like this, okay, we do not need the information of demand to find out the quantity traded, right? As you can see, the quantity supplied of crude oil represents the quantity traded in this case of effective price ceiling. So with the effective price ceiling 2.95 on crude oil, to find out the quantity traded, okay, just plug in that back into the supply function here. Then we'll have the quantity traded of crude oil 112.69. As described here, 10% of crude oil traded will be used to produce gasoline, which means that when the quantity traded is low enough, then the supply of gasoline will be represented by this supply function, okay, the upward sloping supply as usual. However, when the quantity supplied of gasoline reaches to 11.269, 10% of the quantity traded of crude oil, then no matter how high the market price is, we cannot increase the quantity supply of gasoline anymore. So this is why the supply of gasoline would be king at the quantity 11.269. Okay. So after identifying the correct shape of the gasoline supply, nothing special. To find out the market equilibrium is simply the intersection between the downward sloping demand and the pink orange supply here. So this point will be giving us the equilibrium point. And if you're referring to the GeoGebra screenshot here, 0.8 will be the result. The price of gasoline 8.73, the quantity of gasoline 11.269. Okay, finally, question 28 to find the consumer surplus of gasoline. So let's do a quick checking. Consumer surplus is total benefit minus total expenditure, right? So the total benefit under this case would be the orange trapezium here, area under demand curve until the market equilibrium quantity. While the total expenditure will be the equilibrium price multiplied by equilibrium quantity. So this purple rectangle will be the total expenditure. And this explains why the consumer surplus is the orange trapezium minus the purple rectangle, which is essentially the blue triangle on top here. So using a polygon function in GeoGebra, we will be able to find out the area 63.5 here. All right, so that's basically what I'll cover in this tutorial today. By the way, I have also uploaded the tutorial notes of the next topic about externality because there are quite a lot to cover in the next topic about externality. So I would like to invite you to preview the materials beforehand, right? To skim through the tutorial question that we would like to discuss in the next tutorial before next class. And yeah, we prepare that we will overrun quite a bit for next tutorial, maybe around 9:45. Okay, hope you're not going to blame me for that. So just to give you a heads up of the next tutorial. And anyway, it will be the time for the attendance exercise. So 5 minutes as usual, and I will close the quiz at around 9:20. Thank you. So 2 minutes left for the attendance exercise. Okay, so time is up and I'll close the quiz very soon. And yeah, so thank you very much for joining the tutorial. And if you have any question, you can stay behind and ask them. So goodbye.